Hey everybody, welcome back to another Retro Roadshow video. Now, some of you might remember from other videos and media that we've posted that we have a pretty good collection of cathode ray tube monitors, CRT monitors. Most of those are computer monitors, but we've also picked up some televisions along the way, and these are great because they are the best and in some sense the only way to present classic media, specifically video games in particular, to present them as they were meant to be seen. And there are tons of great videos. I might link a couple in the description for this video. There's plenty of great examples out there of why classic pixel art or 2D animation and even early 3D animation tends to look best on the kinds of displays that it was designed to be presented on. A lot of that stuff really suffers when it's displayed on a modern high-resolution display because that's not the kind of display that classic games and media were meant to be presented on. The downside of collecting CRT monitors and TVs is that they're big and they are heavy and they are bulky and they're not super easy to get around with, which is especially difficult for us because we are the Retro Roadshow. We put on events out in the real world that let people get hands-on with this classic technology. And so schlepping a 700-pound monster monitor back and forth gets kind of old. My back is only capable of lifting so much. So we are very excited to show you something that we just picked up this past weekend. It's something that I've wanted forever, right here. And this has been sitting in our living room for a week. We actually haven't opened it yet. I only have a vague sense of what's inside just from having peeked through the front flap. But I'm very excited to show you guys as I find out exactly what we got here. So I'm going to do a quick 360. This is a really heavy-duty, professional quality canvas or nylon style canvas bag. It's labeled Port-A-Brace on the front, and I'll show you what I saw that made my eyes light up and made my family and I excited to take a long drive down to Fresno. Shout out to Billy, thank you for hooking us up with this thing. And let's go ahead and show you what I saw that got me so excited. Check this out. Undoing the flappy flaps, and ta-da! This is a tiny 8-inch Sony PVM Professional Video Monitor. This is not the kind of TV that you would have gone to Sears or Kmart or Target or Walmart to buy to use in your home. This is a professional video monitor of the type, in this case, because it's so small, it would have likely been used in a TV or film production context, and very possibly it would have been used in a production truck. It was actually fairly common in those days to have a bunch of these things on a rack in a production truck. Your local TV news station would have had a setup like that. And so as of now, you are seeing all I have seen of this device. All I did was peek inside the front flap to get a sense of what it was. I don't know what model it is. I don't know what options it might have. There are pockets on this bag that might have stuff in them. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what we got here. So this hood is actually kind of neat. I'm assuming that this was designed to be a sun glare guard because, again, these would have been used out in the real world, not just in a lighting controlled TV or film studio. There's a big Velcro pouch on the side here, and there's something in here. Oh, nice. It's the shoulder strap for the carrying case. That's awesome. I imagine that'll actually come in handy if this thing works and we're lugging it back and forth to our Retro Roadshow events. Let's go ahead and close that up. We've got more flaps on the top here. There's a big flap in the back. I think there's more pockets on the side. Is this a pocket? Yeah, it looks like a... No, it's a cooling vent. That's interesting. You can see the side of the PVM through this. I think this is probably meant to align with the cooling vents on the CRT because they tend to get pretty warm when they're in use, and putting it literally inside of a bag like this, I can imagine it overheating. And, oh yeah, look at that. There's all of the inputs and outputs for this Sony PVM. Pretty neat. So I'm going to try to figure out how to get this thing out of the bag without damaging it so we can actually see what we've got here. It might just be a matter of, no, I don't think it slides out the front. It's a little too snug for that. Let's see, does it go out the back? Maybe. Nope. Wow, how do you get this thing out? Oh, there's a zipper. I bet it goes out through the bottom. There's a big old zipper on here. Yeah, it looks like it runs the whole length of the bottom edge of the case, maybe. I'm going to be really gentle with this thing. It's fairly heavy given how small it is. I don't want to crunch anything. Well, the zipper only goes to the back edge, but it does not go all the way around. Wow, this is kind of interesting design. It's a little bit like Velcro origami. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So now with this loosened up, maybe the whole thing can pop out the front like this. There are little rack handles on the front. There we go. And just like that, the PVM is free of its bag. Go ahead and set this down here. Bonk. And man, that is a heavy duty case. The case itself probably weighs 8 or 10 pounds. That's amazing. So here we have it. This is the Sony, I'm thinking 8-inch PVM, just from eyeballing it here. Give it a little 360 spin. And on the front, of course, we have the glass cathode ray picture tube with lots of adjustment options. This looks a lot like our, I think we have a 19 or 20-inch PVM. This looks so similar to it, just shrunken down. It has an absolutely adorable little handle on top that's recessed into the top of the case, which, oh yeah, that's great. That's super convenient for moving this thing around. And around the back here, I'm going to move this little camera so we can get a better look at this here. We've got quite a few inputs and outputs here. We've got S-video, in and out. And you might wonder to yourself, why would a TV like this have outputs? It's not generating anything, it's just a display. But outputs on a professional video monitor are really helpful because you potentially would have been using a bunch of these in a chain in a production studio. So being able to pass your signal from one to the next could actually be really helpful. That's why you tend to see a lot of inputs and outputs on these professional monitors. So we've got video in, audio in, line A and B, S-video. Looks like these B and C connectors. They look a little bit like coax cable lines, but it's a different form of connector. These are what you would typically call component video today. Wow, this thing is super cool. This is really, really cool. So I think the most obvious thing I could do would be to plug it in and see if it turns on. And if it does turn on, and I'm crossing my fingers that this thing works and has survived the decades since it was manufactured, which based on the tag on the back, it was built in January of 2003. So at the time of shooting, this thing is just shy of 20 years old, which is pretty darn cool. Gosh, 2003, that's fairly late in the game for a standard definition CRT. I don't know. I want to look up the production timeline and see if my hunch is right, but this may have been among the last of these that Sony built, given that timeline. These were way more common in the 80s and 90s. But yeah, if it turns on and works, we need something that we can put on screen to see if it's good. And I just so happen to have a big bucket of Super Nintendo stuff here, which would make for a pretty fun test. So yeah, I'm gonna hit pause on the video. Let's get some cables and wiring. Let's see how this thing works. All right, I'm back, and I now have a power cord, which is just a standard, like, I'm sure there's a technical name for it, but it's the same kind of power cord you would use on a desktop computer or anything like that. And that is the same type of plug that appears to be on the back of this PVM. And it's kind of interesting, actually, that this one has a removable power plug, because I think the other two PVMs we own, at least one of them, I think, has only a gigantic, super thick built-in power cord. I may be mistaken, but anyways, it's nice that this one's detachable, especially for a portable display. So yeah, let's go ahead and plug this thing in and see if it'll turn on and see what we can do with it. All right, there's power. And everybody cross your fingers. I'm gonna give a little disclaimer now before I actually hit the power switch on this thing. I've done my best to prep my cameras, the GoPro here, the Sony Alpha that I'm filming on over there. I've done my best to set them to the same refresh rate, the same frame rate that a typical CRT would use. I'm in America, we're on a 60 hertz power system here, which means that these displays will refresh what's happening on the screen 30 times a second. It's called a 30 hertz refresh rate. Although technically I think it might be 29.97, something like that. Anyways, it's pretty darn close to 30 times a second. And that's awesome and great and cool, but the catch is when you're filming a CRT, it can actually cause some headaches, like literally, because especially a modern camera that can shoot at a crazy high frame rate. This little GoPro can shoot at hundreds of frames a second. I think the Alpha can as well. Your iPhone can probably shoot at 120, maybe even 240 frames a second, depending on what model it is. The catch with all of this is these modern cameras will shoot frames so much faster than these screens are redrawing them that they end up looking crazy. They look all flickery and distorted. So I'm hoping that that won't happen here, but bear with me. If this looks crazy and flickery, I may shoot some additional footage after I get the cameras synced up to the refresh rate of the screen. So fingers crossed that it's not too bad right now. I've certainly made that mistake before shooting other retro gaming and retro computing videos. But in any case, there's a power toggle on the front. I'm a little nervous. I'm excited. I hope this works. 3, 2, 1. I hear a hum, a click, and a pop. And do we have anything happening? Green power light is on. That's a good sign. Now, these TVs are old enough, I wouldn't expect it to have a menu or anything like that, although I suppose it could surprise me. But I am wondering if it'll say something like line in or input 1 or something like that. As of now, I'm not seeing anything quite like that. But it's also possible that it just won't display anything on screen until it's receiving a signal. I've had other monitors that work that way. But I'm just going to fiddle with some of these buttons on the front and see if I can trigger anything appearing on screen. So let's see what happens. I think that's the degauss button. Degaussing is a whole different topic. I actually have a video about that in my feed. If you take a look at that, I might link that in the description as well. Degaussing just means stabilizing the magnetic field that lets a cathode ray tube, a CRT, work its magic and do its thing. I hit the button and I heard this thing make a humming and a clicking sound, which is good. That indicates that this is functioning, at least in that sense. It's able to demagnetize itself. Let's try a couple of these other buttons. Oh, I got a flicker on the screen. Yeah. Well, no indication of any like on-screen menu or graphics or anything like that. But again, I'm not terribly surprised. I don't think I would expect that with this thing. So I'm going to use the magic of movie editing here. I'm going to pause again for a moment. I'm going to grab some goodies out of that big bin of Super Nintendo stuff that I showed you a minute ago. Let's hook it all up and we'll try this test again, but with an actual video signal going into the Sony PVM, which I should also look and see what model this is. This is a PVM-8045Q, 8045Q. So that's the model we've got here. I don't know the entire catalog of PVMs off the top of my head, but my general sense is that this is actually a pretty nice monitor based on that model number. I'll have to look that up. There's an amazing database of Sony PVMs. I'm sure they have a page on this model. I might link that in the description as well once I get around to posting this. So, all right, pause again. And just like that, we're back. So now we've got a Super Nintendo, got a stack of classic games. We're ready to rock. I've also got a special cable. I'm going to swing this around so you guys can see this. This cable is made by HD Retrovision, and they let a standard Super Nintendo output into the 3-color RGB or component output that a high-end CRT like this would use. So that's pretty handy, but the catch, of course, is that this is a professional video monitor. Again, it's not something that you would just typically buy to use in a home, and so it doesn't use these little RCA jacks that you would typically see most consumer level gear using. It has BNC connectors, which are like twist on, twist off, much more suitable for a professional setting. But I just so happen to have a bunch of little adapters that let you go from BNC on a monitor like this to the RCA plugs that most consumer gear from the 80s and 90s used. So I'm just going to take the 3 video leads, red, green, and blue RGB, and I'm going to adapt them to BNC. Except I seem to have bought the wrong ones, maybe? No. There we go. Ah. Oop, hope I didn't just crimp my wire. There we go. They're just very, very snug. That's fine. Alright, nice. So as long as I didn't just break it, I should now be able to plug these in to the equivalent RGB inputs here. And there it says RGB component, RGB, red, green, blue. So let's go ahead, pop these puppies on here. And it's kind of a twist and lock maneuver to get these on. So that's red. There goes green. Nice. And blue. Oof, that last one does not want to lock in. But there it goes. Okay, cool. Now we've got RGB. I'm also just going to plug in one audio line because there's only one audio input. This PVM is amazing, but it's not a stereo sound system. It can pass stereo through, I'm pretty sure, but nevertheless, it probably just has one teeny tiny little speaker inside. But with all that done, we've got a Super Nintendo plugged into this Sony PVM-8045Q, and I'm going to pop in a game, personal favorite. Let's try out some F-Zero, and we'll see if we can get anything to display on the screen of the Sony PVM. So here goes nothing. Power is off. Turning the PVM back on. I hear the click and the hum. That's a pretty good sign. And I'm going to hit power on the Super Nintendo, but again, I was just fiddling with all the buttons on the front, so I have no idea if it's currently set to use the RGB input that I just connected the Super Nintendo to. So let's see what happens. Power. Super Nintendo power light is on. We've got nothing happening on screen as of yet, but again, I'm not terribly surprised because I probably jumbled up the input lines here. So let's see. A, B, line, RGB. That's probably it. Let's see. Oh, look at that. We've got an image. Now the image looks very green to me, like super duper green. I'm wondering why that might be. Let's see here. I wonder if I messed something up here. So we've got 16:9 turned on. Let me turn the volume down. There we go. So first off, let me just take a moment before I do anything else. It works. It just turned on and it looks pretty darn cool. It looks pretty darn cool. Now I immediately notice a couple of things that I want to try to improve. The first one being that the image is squished. And that's because I think, relating to the fact that this thing came in and this was manufactured in early 2003, that was early but into the high definition era when a lot of TVs, even the last generation consumer CRT sets like this, they were being built in a 16:9 widescreen ratio. This is a 4:3 square screen, or nearly square screen, but because it was being used in a professional video setting, it has a toggle switch on the front to let it go from a 4:3 standard definition all the way down to a squished 16:9. But I don't want it to be 16:9. I want to fill the screen. There we go, looking good. And now I got to figure out how to get the colors to not look all weird. So let's try changing some of these settings. We've got chroma set all the way up. Let's adjust that. No, still looks pretty normal. Or I mean, pretty green rather. We've got brightness or contrast maybe there. I do wonder if I might have just crinkled my cable when I was putzing with plugging it in. That could account for the issue that we're seeing here. But let's try some of these other toggles. So that's the input selector. Oh, look at that. There we go. It's perfect. I just had the wrong toggle turned on. Holy moly, that looks incredible. I cannot get over how great that looks. Now again, with the refresh rate not being perfectly synchronized between the cameras and what's happening on the screen, my cameras are recording at 30 frames a second exactly. This screen is refreshing at 29.9 something frames per second, which is why you're seeing that slow drift out of synchronization. I'll figure out how to get that squared away in the future, but I am absolutely delighted. Look at how crispy sharp this thing is. compared to a typical consumer TV, which I have some typical consumer TVs from Sony in this same size range. I think I have a 7 or 8 inch Sony consumer TV. This thing looks incredible. It's bright, sharp, no wavering, no wobbly lines, no nothing. It looks amazing. So I'm going to step away one more time because I have one more item that I picked up that will help us verify that this awesome tiny little portable CRT is working the way it should. So stand by for one more moment and cut. All right, back again with one last thing that will help us validate that this awesome little Sony PVM is working the way it should, and that's an item that I just got recently from Mad Catz Gaming, and it is the Super Nintendo release of the 240p test suite, which is nerd speak for a bunch of tests that you can run on a Super Nintendo to help you verify that your CRT television or monitor is working the way it's supposed to. The software itself, I think, is open source. I'm pretty sure you can download it if you have a flash cartridge for Super Nintendo, or if you want to burn it. There's versions for other systems like, I think, PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, Sega Genesis, and so on. But I have real Super Nintendo hardware, so I wanted a real Super Nintendo cartridge, and the fine folks at Mad Catz sell that, and they did a beautiful job. It looks and feels like an actual Super Nintendo game. So let's turn off F-Zero, pop in the 240p test suite, fire this up, and this offers a bunch of really helpful testing tools for adjusting and verifying the functions of your CRT display. And if we take a look here, we've got some test patterns. We can go to the, where is it, monoscope. That is incredible. Look at how crispy sharp that is. Wow, that looks amazing. That looks just fantastic. I can't get over how bright and clean and sharp it is. I was up late last night trying to adjust a really nice 14-inch Sony consumer level TV that we have that I found on the sidewalk a few years ago. It's a great TV. It looks great in our living room, but it's a consumer set. It doesn't have any easily reachable adjustment options. So using this same Super Nintendo game, I was able to verify exactly what I need to adjust when I take that thing apart. But at least my first impression of this set, or this monitor rather, no adjustment needed. It looks amazing. Dang, that looks great. I can't get over how good that looks. It looks really, really good. Man, awesome. So that's it. Thank you for watching this unbagging video of a really cool Sony portable video monitor. And stick around, we've got more interesting unboxing videos coming to the channel in the immediate future. Like literally, it's the next thing I'm filming today. So hope to see you there. Thanks. Bye.